So next month, July, sees us enter the third phase, or the third quarter of Historathon 2023, a wonderful year-long event hosted by my good friend Vin from Revenant Reads, and a wonderful plethora of other hosts, of which I count myself extremely lucky to be part of. Now, this is a very exciting quarter. I mean, they all have been. I was kind of thinking afterwards, though, that, so much happens in this quarter that 3 months isn't enough, and I would suggest cutting it down maybe on the ancient history, but then other people love the ancient so you can't please everyone. So I think Vin's done the right thing, trying to give equal measure to it, but there's just so much going on between 1500 and 1820, which is when this quarter of Historathon starts. So I've got a potential TBR, or a pile of possibilities for you, and I'm in no way committing to reading all of these. A lot of them are really just suggestions for some of you guys if you want to read them, because I've read a few of these already, so I think it's also nice to share, even things that are rereads. So I haven't really decided which ones I am going to read. There are so many events going on that it's going to be tricky, but I've got 3 months to do it, so if I can manage at least one book a month, that will be fine. Hello everyone, welcome to and welcome back to my channel, Book Time with Elvis, with me, Mark, and I hope very much you're all doing well on this Friday day. So let's crack on and look at the potential reads for the third quarter of Historathon. Now we're going to start kind of on the cusp of the time period here with Thomas Penn's The Winter King, which is this is there, the dawn of Tudor England, but it's I guess a biography of Henry VII, the first Tudor monarch there, and I believe the book, or at least at the back here, it says it starts, it's 1501, Henry VII has won the throne of England through luck, guile and ruthlessness, but for many he remains a usurper. Now his elder son is to marry in a wedding upon which the fate of the country and the entire Tudor dynasty will hang. So I think that will be a very interesting read indeed. Now, I very much love the Tudors, but to me, they're kind of like, there's nothing new there. I read so much about them. I've studied them so much at school and whatnot. So this is the only concession to Tudor England that I'm making, because Henry VII is the Tudor that I know probably the least about, at least his time as king, if one discounts his time as an opposition member during the Wars of the Roses there. So we'll move across to East Asia now for our next pick, and the book you'll see there on the thumbnail, which is Shogun, The Life of Tokugawa Ieyasu. And this is a book from Tuttle Publishing, wonderful publishers of Asian works about Asia especially. And yeah, this is, as I say, a biography of the first member of the Tokugawa shogunate, which of course lasted from, I think around 1600, is it? Or 1603, something like that, all the way through to the mid-19th century. So it almost takes us through the period that we are looking at. So I think this will be interesting. I've had it for a while and I've yet to read it. So yeah, there we go. And sticking with Japan, I have another biography of a well-known Japanese, I suppose hero really. Now it's funny, the size of this book pales in comparison to the historical novel based on the life of this person, which is Miyamoto Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa, and this is instead the life of Miyamoto Musashi by William Scott Wilson, and it is much, much smaller. If Vin is watching, I'm sure he can attest to the size of the historical novel based around this legendary character. And I don't know if you know anything about him, but I'll just give you a bit at the back here. The Lone Samurai is a landmark biography of Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese figure known throughout the world as a master swordsman, spiritual seeker, and author of the Book of Five Rings, a stunning portrait of a courageous and singularly determined man emerges in these pages, the first biography of Musashi to appear in English. With a compassionate yet critical eye, William Scott Wilson delves into the workings of Musashi's mind as the iconoclastic samurai wrestled with philosophical and spiritual ideas that are as relevant today as they were in his times. The Lone Samurai is far more than a vivid account of a fascinating period in feudal Japan. It is the story of one man's quest to find the right path in life and the reward it eventually led to. So there we go. Pretty good. I have read that one, though, but it was a long time ago. It's got to be coming up to 20 years ago. So let's move a little bit away from Asia through to, well, kind of on the cusp between Europe and Asia, let's say. And that's maybe looking at Simon Sebag Montefiore's biography of the Romanovs as a dynasty. So now this will start in the early 1500s, and of course it would carry on through to the 20th century, to 1917, with the death of the last Romanovs, or at least the last Tsar. And I've yet to read this. I've been wanting to. It's a beautiful book. So yeah, this one could be one that I leisurely go through, because, you know, if I can get to the point where I can finish at the end of the quarter, start of the next quarter, it will slot in nicely. And of course, there'll be a lot of interesting bits of information and stuff surrounding this most remarkable family. Now, one I definitely want to try and get to, although it is massive, and it's partly because a lot of the action takes place in my part of the world, here in Central Europe, and that's Peter Wilson's Europe's Tragedy, A New History of the 30 Years' War. I was thinking to look at the English Civil War. I suppose I should just say the Civil War, because it was the first one between the American and British ones. So yeah, perhaps they should be the ones to say the American Civil War, right, guys? I'm only kidding, or am I? But you know, this takes place in the lead up, I suppose, to the English Civil War, because people like Prince Rupert from the Rhine, you know, who got his experience during the 30 Years' War, took part in some of the battles between the Roundheads and Cavaliers during the Civil War in England. And it rages between 1618 and 1648, and this, by all accounts, is supposed to be a really good book. So I'm very much looking forward to it, but it is rather large, although, like a lot of these things, it does seem to be primarily made up at the back there of appendices and notes. So it does kind of perhaps cut it down a little bit, you know, and indices and things like that. So I think that would be good. Moving back to Russia. No, let's not move back to Russia yet. Let's move to one that would be a reread, but again, it's been so long since I've read it, and it's a short book, and it shouldn't take very long at all, but it's a wonderful, wonderful book, and I encourage you to read it if you've yet to do so, because it is something that perhaps doesn't seem that interesting or perhaps important, but the author does a remarkable job, and this was a huge bestseller when it came out, and that's Longitude by Dava Sobel. It's the story of John Harrison, who and his efforts to try and work out as it says there, the greatest scientific problem of his time, and that was, of course, the establishment of longitude, allowing people to find out exactly where on Earth they were. And it's really, really an excellent read, and not very big. So do yourself a favour, and if you only read one thing for this period, give this a go. So back to Russia, and back to Simon Sebag Montefiore, and that's his book Catherine the Great and Potemkin, which is about the love affair between the two people mentioned there in the title. It was history's most successful political partnership, as sensual and fiery as it was creative and visionary. Catherine the Great was a woman of notorious passion and imperial ambition. Prince Potemkin, wildly flamboyant and sublimely talented, was the love of her life and her co-ruler. Together they seized Ukraine and Crimea. Well, things haven't changed much. Defining the Russian Empire to this day, Their affair was so tumultuous that they negotiated an arrangement to share power, leaving Potemkin free to love his beautiful nieces and Catherine her young male favourites. But these twin souls never stopped loving each other. Drawing on their intimate letters and vast new research, Simon Sebag Montefiore's enthralling, widely acclaimed biography restores these imperial partners to their rightful place as titans of the age. So, gosh, I'm running out of space here. On to our next one, which I was thinking to save for August of Adventure, which is fine because it still falls into this period, and I probably will read it then. And this is Arabia Felix by Thorkild Hansen. And it's the story of this rather doomed Danish expedition to, I want to say Arabia, but it could be Africa, somewhere like that. But no, it doesn't really say, just the back there. Let me read the back to you. Arabia Felix is the spellbinding true story of a scientific expedition gone disastrously awry. On a winter morning in 1761, 6 men leave Copenhagen by sea: a botanist, a philologist, an astronomer, a doctor, an artist, and their manservant, an ill-sorted band of men who dislike and distrust one another from the start. These are the members of the Danish expedition, the Arabia Felix, as Yemen was then known. Okay, well, there we go. So it's Arabia, basically. Well, Yemen, but the Arabian Peninsula. There we go. The first organised foray into the corner of the world unknown to Europeans. The expedition made its way to Turkey and Egypt, by which time its members were already actively seeking to undercut and even kill one another before disappearing into the harsh desert that was their destination. Nearly 7 years later, a single survivor returned to Denmark to find himself forgotten, and all specimens that he had sent back had been ruined by neglect. Based on diaries, notebooks, and sketches that lay unread in Danish archives until the 20th century, Arabia Felix is a tale of intellectual rivalry and a comedy of very bad manners, as well as an utterly absorbing adventure. So, sounds awesome, right? And then another biography. I think the rest of these are actually all biographies. And these take us into the 19th century. Now, a couple of them do overspill our period by a couple of years. One of them by maybe almost 20 years or something like that, if I remember rightly. But I probably won't be reading that anyway because it's been a reread. But one I want to read is a biography here of Mr. Ludwig van Beethoven by John Suchet. I read his biography of Mozart, which was absolutely fantastic, and now I want to read Beethoven. So I think it's a good opportunity to do it. Next up, this will definitely be a reread, but it's been a long time since I read it, and it was fantastic. I mean, it's been one I've read probably a couple of times, but it's a great biography, and that's the biography of Shaka Zulu, The Rise of the Zulu Empire by E.A. Ritter. Shaka Zulu basically brought the Zulu peoples from obscurity to being one of the most formidable empires, seen in sub-Saharan Africa. So yeah, I think it would be great to revisit this, and again, it fits in fairly well with our time. Now, the one that overshoots a little bit, although born in the 18th century, and a lot of his career-defining moment takes place, let's say, in our period, and I think that's fine. And I may reread it because it has, again, been a while, because it was given to me on the occasion of my 22nd birthday, and actually very nicely signed by the author, who's sadly since passed away, and that's Wellington the Iron Duke by Richard Holmes. And probably I don't need to say much about that, but it is a biography of His Grace the Duke of Wellington, the person who, not alone of course, but significantly contributed to the defeat of our next subject, which is Napoleon, A Life, or if you have, I believe, the American edition, I think it's called Napoleon the Great, or vice versa. I can't remember which way that goes. And it's a book I listened to, I think maybe 2 years ago, and it was great. And I would actually think of actually reading it rather than having just listened to the audiobook, because there were probably a couple of things that I missed. And Napoleon's always fascinating. And then, in a nod to the American Revolution and I suppose it also, of course, fits in with the Napoleonic Wars and whatnot, is Andrew Roberts's biography of the last king of America, the misunderstood reign of George III. And again, it's one I have listened to, though yet to read. So some of these are quite substantial. I do have 3 months to get through the ones that I pick, and I will let you know eventually which ones those are. And, there are still some that could be ebooks that I haven't thought of yet. So, yeah, as I said, this is not by any means a set in stone list, but I wanted to show you some of the things that were available, some of the things I've read before and would recommend to you, and perhaps even the ones I haven't read before may be of interest to you as well, while you try to find something a bit out of the ordinary to read during this period. So I hope that was helpful, and yeah, I look forward to seeing down below. If you're planning on reading anything for quarter 3 of Historathon, do let me know, and I will be back again very soon. Do take care, everybody. Bye for now.